welcome back to me talking about my version of the Marauders in podcast form with Emma. If you think we asked questions, we absolutely did not, because here's what happened. I was live streaming on Twitch, and then we were like, and Emma was like, I have time to record right now, and I was like, bye. I was like, bye Twitch, you know? So...
We asked questions last time, and we just did like food ones, though.
Oh yeah, we did. You're so yo, whoa, no class this week. I just got the best notification. You're so right. We totally did have questions, but we got to go through them fast because you're limited. What you got to do after this?
Make gingerbread houses.
Oh, okay. So it's not like a wedding, like the last time we were on a time crunch. Okay, I can work with gingerbread house deadlines.
Gingerbread houses are important.
They are important. Thoughts on frogs? Go.
Yeah.
Okay, same. But I would also like to add, I really like when people say, when they abbreviate MILF to instead mean man, I love frogs. I think that's great. I think it's excellent. What? I feel like we might have done this before, but what Muggle sport would each Marauder play?
James would do cross country and football.
You're so right. I don't see football, but cross country for sure. I feel like he plays lacrosse. Peter does chess. That's the closest thing.
Yeah, he's like the chess club president.
He is ping pong, like, extraordinaire. Man can play some ping pong, you know? I feel like
Remus would play volleyball against his will. He would be forced to play a sport, and that would be what he does.
Yeah, and then like Sirius is for sure a soccer dude. You know?
I feel like he would be in show choir.
Come on, we all know that's not a sport. Get that out of here.
According to the county guidelines, it isn't.
Yeah, it isn't. Not in our county. No, I feel like you're absolutely right, but I also feel like he's a soccer dude, you know? Like there are a couple people in show choir that also did a sport, and he has that vibe, you know? So I feel like that's the vibe. Weirdest award you ever got? I feel like I've talked about this on the podcast, but when I got the award when we were at camp together, and they gave out, little camp awards, and they gave me the one for the most common sense, and I thought it was a joke because I was like, not me, like, not this girl right here. So
this was not an award I got, but I was the runner-up for it.
Oh no.
A Horse Master Award. Have I not told you about this? I talk about this a lot.
No, I've never heard this story before.
Physics. We were doing our unit on work, and so we did like an activity where you measured like the amount of work you could do by like running up the bleachers as fast as you can. And if you got like the same amount of work as like 1 horsepower, then whoever had the most horsepower got the Horsemaster Award, and I was the runner-up for it. And the award was a certificate, and it had a picture of a horse on it, but instead of like a horse head, it was our physics teacher's face.
Oh my god. These are the classes in high school that I missed because I was in show choir.
You missed out on a good, solid Horsemaster Award.
Oh my word! And I had never heard about this when it actually happened. That's so funny.
I talk about this like weekly. Like it comes up a lot.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I would say the other craziest thing, like weirdest award I've ever gotten, wasn't like a weird award. It was just I got the award for best soloist, and I had a solo that was 8 measures long. And I didn't think that was possible because usually the best soloist had like a whole song basically, And then I've never been more surprised to get an award in my life than I was at that particular moment. Like, me and my mom looked at each other, we were like, girl, who decided that? Like, I'm very proud of it, but I'm like, I don't know what that is. So, and I also did that while I was completely sick, like, in the worst of my stuff. So I'm pretty proud of that. Somebody said right now?
Right now?
Right now?
Right now? Yeah.
Yeah. Favorite article of clothing? I'll tell you mine right now. It's sweaters. You will not see me without a good sweater.
I think I wore like one of my sweaters like 3 times in the past week.
Nice.
It's just a good sweater.
Sweaters are great.
I really like this flannel though. It's a good solid one. I wear it a lot.
Yeah, you do. It's a good flannel. Yeah, my favorite thing is getting new people cycle in here. Because somebody asked me, have we read all the young dudes? And yes, obviously. You clearly haven't been around a long time, because that's what I used to make all my content about.
I remember you were like telling me to read it, and then I like finally got around to like reading it, and that was the same time that Heat Waves was being released, and you were like so excited, like I got to like the best part or something, and then it crashed.
Yeah, I remember Emma texting me. She was like, hey, I'm about to read this chapter. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's such a good chapter. And then immediately all of AO3 just crashed because of freaking Heat Waves. I haven't heard anybody talk about Heat Waves anytime recently. It's just that was a very popular thing, but it was very short-lived apparently. And just any life updates. We have exams in like 2 weeks. Yeah. That's how I'm feeling. So yeah, we're doing great.
My uncle, who listens to this podcast, just got a puppy on Thanksgiving, and she is so cute.
Okay. He's got 2 options for a name. I don't care if he's already named the puppy. I'm naming the puppy right now. It's either Snuffles 2 because he likes the podcast, or Shakira because he likes the podcast. I think
Padfoot was one of the choices, but her name is Storm because they all have superhero themed names.
Yeah, that's pretty cute.
She is so cute.
Yeah. All right, that's a pretty good update. My update was that I went to my grandparents' house and Snuffles was there and didn't lose her mind.
Always fun.
Yeah, and my grandpa called me a dog abuser because she doesn't eat human food. And she would just look at him and she was like, man, I can't believe you're abusing this dog. And I was like, she's literally fine. She is okay. She gets plenty of food, just not human food. And he's like, well, that's not right.
He's like, give her a slice of pumpkin pie.
He tried a lot of things. And I had to be like, please don't. It will ruin her stomach. She's not good at that. And I will have to deal with the consequences. But yeah. I think we're good. All right, we can what can we do into this episode?
Snuffle on in.
We can snuffle on into this episode. All right. So if you'll remember, we ended at Christmas break with some interesting things happening with Remus and all that fun stuff. But the rest of Christmas break, I think, is pretty epic. I'm not going to go into detail too much because it just would have taken far too long. But I think eventually they all get together and they go and chill and like have a fun afternoon in London. And Lily and James are both pretending that they've like never been to London before and are like, what? There's a performance venue here? Man.
Yeah.
It would be crazy to go see something there.
Wow. It'd be crazy if you had to sneak in.
Yeah. They would have so much fun with that. But yeah, so I think they have a good solid time. You're free to imagine that however you want. But I also think Remus talked to his family about everything, and it wasn't like super fun, but I think his dad like comes around to it, decides that, you know what, he's going to leave the ministry within the next month or two. And so, you know, they decide to go with this plan. But eventually all good things come to an end. So they come back to school and, you know, they're vibing. And it doesn't take very long for things to just get back to normal. And soon they're, you know, going to their classes, simply vibing. And soon it's like the middle of January. And Lily and James are like officially dating now. Like to the point where like everybody knows about it now. And it's like an established thing. I think all the prefects like don't care because they're nothing like the two from the previous year. And they're like, okay, but they get lots of warnings about not turning into them. Like, you know, especially from Remus, every meeting, you know, James will be like,
any requests, anything we can do to like help? And Remus is like,
he's like, stop dating. No, but I think okay, this is very important. I think James, as soon as they start dating, he calls Lily Lils, and that's just how it is. But I think he calls her that in a prefect meeting one time, and Remus immediately is like, boo, gross, disgusting. And James is like, I'm sorry, fine, okay, Evans. And he's like, no, that's worse. He's like, that's so gross. That's what you called her when you guys used to flirt all the time. And he's like, okay, I'm sorry. What do you want me to call? What do you want me to call her? And
he's like, don't.
Like, yeah, he's like, do you have to refer to her at all? Like, seems like it's a little bit much if you guys are like talking about each other, you know? But yeah, I think all the prefects, it became like a big joke. Like all the prefects are getting in on it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he's like got a point. You know, you guys are being a bit too much." They're like not doing anything.
They're like sitting like on opposite sides of the table.
Yeah, on opposite sides of the room. Like
they're like talking to each other in the job that they have to do together. Like
exactly. But yeah, I feel like prefect meetings for a while turned into an annoyance for Lily and James and a fun time for every other prefect involved. But I feel like all the prefects like were pretty good friends this year. Like sometimes it's just like, oh, they just like do it, but they've bonded a bit. Even people like Regulus.
Bradley and Regulus.
Bradley left. Bradley said, I'm out of here after like the first week, but Regulus isn't here. And I think he just kind of usually sits in the back and doesn't do much. But like sometimes he does get into it, and it's always like insane to them when he does. Because like he's got friends in the other houses, but he's like not friends with them. But yeah, one time I feel like at one point, like people are like, oh yeah, you guys are making such a big deal, you know, you're doing all this stuff. And Regulus is like, you know, it's so true. I walked in early today and they like forced me to watch them kiss for like 40 straight minutes. And everybody's like, oh, they like start freaking out because Regulus doesn't say anything. And they're just like, what the heck is going on? And then one of the others is like, Regulus, you came in late to today's meeting. And he's like, yeah, I had to recover. Oh my gosh, so it's a good time. But anyway, so all the prefects are bonding, which is honestly good because I feel like the rest of the school is needing the prefects' help more and more, and like Lily and James are needing their help more and more. I feel like tensions among the students are just high, especially after the holidays. I feel like there was another attack on like a muggle born in Hufflepuff and like on her parents, and she never came back to school. From the sounds of it, she got like the same kind of threat that Lily did, and Lily like feels a lot of emotions about that because she was like, they said if I didn't come back, then, you know, nothing would happen, and now something happened, and, you know. But James is like, they would have done it anyway, it doesn't matter. But, you know. But yeah, so Lily and James have to figure out how to get the prefects, at least one of which they know is a Death Eater himself, to like kind of diffuse these fights and calm the tension. So yeah, like the first year study room was great, but they have to get the prefects help. So they tell them like unequivocally they have to suck it up, be nice to everybody. And they just focus on the fact that like it's school and none of them really know anything anyway, and they're like all kids.
They're all 11.
Yeah, and they're like, school is supposed to be fun, like there's no reason for any of this. And honestly, they all took it well. They straight up did not know what Regulus would do with those instructions, but apparently he was like, you know what, I'll just be a good prefect, it doesn't really matter. And just kind of does that. And so, if like they're sure that he lets his friends get away with stuff, but like if a Slytherin is being obnoxious, like he's gonna be like, hey, shut up,
Yeah.
And it's pretty chill. And they're like, okay, and everything's civil and it's good. So one time after a Friday night meeting, Peter and Sirius are outside the door to the prefect common room, and so are a couple of other friends of prefects. And then a voice says, "Oi, Pettigrew! Lovely seeing you over Christmas. Party was just phenomenal, wasn't it?" And it's Barty Crouch Jr. and Peter is like, and Sirius looks at him and he's like, the heck? And like Peter's just like, I have no idea. Like he's making something up. And Sirius is willing to believe that, because why would Peter ever be hanging out with people? So neither of them say anything.
Why would Peter have friends?
Literally. But then Barty continues and he's like, oh, come on, don't be shy now. I mean, you really got it going at the after party. Like, you can't hide this. You can't hide it from me now. And Sirius looks at him again, and Peter's just like, seriously, I have no idea what he's talking about. And he like looks legitimately confused. He's a good actor. And Sirius is like, okay, Junior. I think he calls Barty Crouch Jr., and I think it's really funny. He's like, just because you're stupid enough to get Pete confused with someone else doesn't mean that you have to embarrass yourself in front of everybody else. And Barty's like, I wasn't speaking to you, traitor. And like, oh, then like the whole hall kind of like, oh shoot, we're not gonna say anything to that. And by the look on Sirius's face, there's no more joking. And he's like, yeah, I'd think twice about calling me that. Barty, he's going towards Barty, he's pulling out his wand, and Peter's like, Sirius, we are outside a room full of literally every prefect. They've specifically, but he's like, he just says it's not worth it. He's trying to get a rise out of you. But it's enough to make Sirius reconsider. And he's like, okay, they're really trying to stop the fighting problem. People in there are my best friends and my boyfriend. I should probably not do that. And so he's like, you're lucky I feel forgiving tonight, Junior. And turns away. And then Barty says something to Sirius about him being a coward and hits him with a pretty bad spell in the back of the head. And so then Sirius spins around abruptly and hits Barty with his stinging hex, and then immediately somebody goes inside to get the prefects, but not before Barty sends a pretty good like singeing hex, like fire, right at Sirius, who is distracted by the open prefect door. He doesn't actually deflect it, but instead just blocks his face using his left arm. So immediately the situation is deflated by Lily and James running in, but not before Barty catches sight of Sirius's left wrist. And he's like, you? He's like, bro, what the heck? And Sirius like sees where his eyes went, and then James is and then he sees how when James is like, Barty, you gotta go to your head of house, and somebody's got to take you. Regulus was like, I'll do it, and Sirius is like, oh my freaking gosh. But then he doesn't have time to really think about it before James pulls him aside and is like, what the frick were you thinking, Sirius? And he's like, I'm sorry. He's like, that's not a good enough answer. I can't keep on sticking up for you, not now. And he's like, I know. And James is like, I'm working so hard right now, you know that? Like he's at his wit's end. And he's like, I'm trying to keep this place safer than it is outside, and I really don't need my best friend making it harder. And he's like, I know, James, I'm really sorry, I really am. And James was like, I know, but just go upstairs so I can deal with this without getting more angry. So that night is pretty rough, but they make up for it. And somehow Sirius manages to forget what Barty said about Peter. He doesn't really think about it too hard.
I feel like Sirius should think a little harder about things sometimes.
I feel like he had a lot to think about immediately after that went down. So, anyway, Yeah, also, I want to keep in mind, Barty's in 5th year and he's in 7th, and I just think that's really funny that they got into a fight. Anyway, so we're gonna go check out Lily. So eventually Lily goes upstairs after Sirius, who she finds in his common room, like about to heal his own arm of like a 1-degree burn that's like all over it since his shirt sleeve got singed off. And she's like, go to Pomfrey. He's like, I can deal with this. She's like, I just told everybody that there was a fight and what happened, and they're gonna figure out that you know how to heal yourself. And he's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So he goes, and Lily goes with him, and she's still a little bit mad, but she's less mad than James was. And so then they get there. When they get there, Lily also finds Minerva, who had apparently just been chilling with Pomfrey, you know. And Lily takes the opportunity to tell Minerva about what just happened, implying that she should reprimand Sirius. And Minerva looked at him and is like, he's probably fine, you know, like he's good. And Lily was like, is this how you deal with them? She's like, at this point, yeah. Like, doesn't really matter. But Lily's like, yeah, honestly, kind of fair though, because James got like really mad at him, like actually kind of mad. And that'll probably have a more lasting effect than anything you would say to him. She's like, that's what I figured. But then Minerva's like, okay, like, how are you? And Lily's like, well, me, like, I'm mad at him too, but in my opinion, it could have been a lot worse. And, you know, if Sirius went after someone 2 years younger than him, it was probably about his family. So, you know, it was something like, and she's like, no, not you. I meant like you and James. Like, how are you two? Has that been going well? And Lily's like, she's like, you heard about that? And she's like, yeah, actually really quickly, I should say. And Lily's like, okay. But Minerva's not backing off. And you know, Lily's like, okay, I did tell her about Thomas. So she's like, well, she's like, I think Pomfrey was right, you know. Maybe love doesn't always follow what you think it does. And McGonagall's like, well, yeah, we had all seen that coming from a mile away. She's like, the heck, bruh. But McGonagall's like, okay, but it is working out, like, you know, better than with you and that, like, Emery's boy. And Lily's like, yeah, it is. And she's like, not interfering with your head girl duties at all, is it? And she's like, no, actually, like, it's fine. Minerva smiles and then looks towards Pomfrey healing Sirius, and she's like, don't change, Lily. Not for love. And she's like, what? She's like, I don't think James would ever try it, but I've seen it happen to too many strong girls. Being with someone means you can be stronger together, not that the man has to take over. Don't change all your ambitions because you have him with you, Lily. And she's like,
wasn't planning on it.
She's like, I'm 17. Hello. But I feel like what she does, she just kind of sits there for a second, and then she's like, have you ever been in love, Professor? And immediately she's like, no, never. And then just walks away, and the conversation's over, and she's like, dang, should have led with that. I could have avoided the whole conversation.
That's how Lily starts every conversation with a teacher now.
Yeah, I'm in love. And they just leave. I feel like it's a pretty foolproof plan. Okay, so let's go check it. Let's see how Peter's doing. So he's in the library the next day, and he sits down with a huff in his usual place, completely ignoring Kyra. And she's like, you good? You good, dude? And he doesn't answer, and instead just puts all his stuff down and pulls out his book and, you know, reads it aggressively. But Kyra's not putting up with any of his BS. She's like, does this have to do with the fight you were involved in yesterday? Or maybe that you haven't said a word to me since the party, like 3 weeks ago? But he's like, I wasn't involved in the fight. And she's like, not the way Barty tells it. And he throws down his book, and he's like, the issue is that he brought up the fact I was at your house over Christmas in front of Sirius. She's like, okay, you were there. He's like, okay. Peter just sputtered a bit, but he doesn't really have a lot of ground to stand on here. And she's like, it's not my fault you've been hanging around with me and my friends. And he's like, and she's like, and you don't have to act like like your friends almost finding out that we kissed a bit at Christmas was the worst thing that ever happened to you. And he's like, you said we didn't have to talk about that. She's like, we don't, but it's not my fault that you, Pete, decided to kiss me in front of everybody that happened to be there. And Peter doesn't say anything. And she goes, and like, Barty's like 3 years old. Who cares what he thinks? But Kyra's like, you know, chilling, and then she's kind of like, so are you gonna apologize to me, or like, and he's like, for what? And she's like, for being a jerk. He was like, you were the one who said it didn't have to mean anything. And she's like, yeah, but you're still a jerk for not talking to me for like 3 weeks. She's like, it's not my fault you feel like your friends will hate it if they know that you're friends with me. And he's like, I'm sorry, Kyra, I am. I'm a bit confused. And for a while I thought maybe I had made a big mistake, and then I was mad and then sad, and I have missed you though. And I want to stay friends with you and my other friends, but I don't know how that's going to work. And I don't know, Kyra. I'm sorry. And she's like, you have some serious issues. She's like, you know that? And Peter's like, sorry. She's like, I gotta go. And so she stands up and gets her stuff, and she's like, and by the way, just because I said it doesn't have to mean anything doesn't mean I wouldn't like it to. And then she leaves, and Peter's like, freaking what? Peter doesn't deal with like regular conflicts well, so this is a lot. Man has a lot going on. He does not have the backbone for this. So yeah. So I feel like the kiss didn't mean anything at the time, but that was the first time that she was like, well, maybe it does. And he's like, why do you gotta tell me this? I'm so bad at everything. But anyway. So they got something going on. Okay, let's go check on Sirius. So in class, a few days after the fight, Sirius opens his bag and he finds a note inside. And it says, tonight, 8 p.m. RAB. You know.
Who's that?
But Remus kind of looks over his shoulder and he's like, it's a good thing I don't know his initials, or I would be pretty worried about that. You got a pretty sneaky thing going on there. And he's like, it's fine. You know, he's like, it's fine. I know what he wants anyway. You know, it's about this thing. He's like, it shouldn't be an issue. And Remus is kind of hesitated, but then he's like, you know, I'm surprised you'll talk to him. You know, I didn't think that you ever would again after this summer. And Sirius is like, yeah, well, I'm not thrilled about it. I just can't seem to push away the fact that he's my little brother. And he's like, no, Sirius, I'm impressed. He's like, I think it's a good thing, you know? I think it's good of you. I mean, like, I think it would be really hard to do regardless of, you know, how he even feels about it. If he got him, or if he just, you know, got himself in really deep, really young. You know, he's trying to bring that stuff up, and Sirius is like, we don't even talk about that. He's like, he needs someone to hear about like the normal things. And it's hard because I want to scream at him half the time, because how could he be so horrible? And at the same time, how could he not? He doesn't have anybody to just talk to. And Remus just kind of nods. It's the most that like Sirius has ever really told him about Regulus. And he's just like, I'm sorry, Sirius. He's like, you know, you can tell me anything about that, but you don't have to. But he's like, but you don't have to feel like it's all bottled up. Like, that's not going to help you either. Sirius is like, fine, you're right. But he's like, this is going to be fine. He's just going to be like, Barty knows about you. And he's going to be like, yeah, I figured that one out on my own. But anyway, so that night, he walks into their usual classroom. He's like, this isn't going to take long. But yeah, he's worked out everything in the past day or so. He's seen them in the Great Hall. He's like, those are classic me and Remus moves. I've seen them before. And he's like, and he has always remembered like seeing them together, you know? It's kind of a weird thing to think about, but also it's not really shocking to him either. So he's like, I don't know. But yeah, so he walks in and he's like, yeah, okay, I'm sorry for attacking your boyfriend, but in my defense, I didn't realize he was your boyfriend until after. And he threw the first shot. And Regulus just kind of is like, that's And Sirius is like, yeah, what you wanted to talk to me about. Well, probably not that specifically, but listen, I've thought about it. I don't think we need to change the vow again. I think the last one covers it, but if you really want to add his name, that's fine. And then you can just be sure that nobody's ever going to mention it. He's like, no, I don't think we have to change it either. And he's like, oh, good. And then they just kind of sit there, and Sirius is like, why'd you bring me here then? He's like, and Regulus is like, can we agree to be civil with each other? And Sirius is like, wasn't that like exactly what this was? What our freaking vow was, to be civil with each other? And he's like, no, I mean, like, really, can I tell you something that will make you very angry and you still be civil and hear me out? And Sirius is like, okay, what are you talking about? He's like, I want to help you, Sirius. And Sirius actually laughs. And he's like, right, okay, how would you do that? He's like, do you agree to be civil? And he's like, not unless I know what it's about. And Regulus is like, okay. And then he just turns to leave, but then Sirius is interested. He's like, okay, fine. I'll try and be civil. And he's like, okay, good. And then there's a pause. We're okay. Well, I'm gonna pet my dog really quick. Sorry. Okay, but then there's a pause, and then Regulus says, "You need to be more careful about trusting Lupin." And Sirius is like, "Excuse me?"
He was not the one I thought this was about.
He's like, you, and Regulus is like, you have no idea what he's capable of, Sirius. And Sirius is like, I think I do. I think I do know what he's capable of. I've literally seen him when he's like, doing his thing. And he's like, I know you think you do, but you don't, Sirius. He's specifically been chosen to be Dumbledore's weapon in war since he was a kid. And Sirius is like, what the heck is, why? And he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, Sirius, please listen to me. And he's like, I think I would know if my best friend, if more than that, was being trained by Dumbledore behind my back. And he's like, listen, I don't think Remus even knows, which is why I think he'll be pretty mad when he finds out, and it might end up not being good for you. And he's like, you sound crazy. You know that? And he's like, you agreed to be civil. And Sirius kind of stops. He's like, I'm just, and Regulus is like, I'm just trying to help you know who you're really following into war, Sirius. He's like, I know who Remus is. I'm not just blindly following him into war. And he's like, do you know how it happened? Who his father is? And Sirius is like, what if maybe I don't know that? But he's not gonna let that on. He's like, his father's a nobody in the Ministry, and it happened when he was 7. So even as he's saying that, he's like, I have a feeling Regulus might know a little bit more than me, because now that I'm saying it out loud, that really doesn't sound like a lot. And Regulus is like, his father wasn't always a nobody. He used to be on the Wizengamot, prominently, and it wasn't an accident. And he's like, what do you mean it wasn't an accident? He's like, Greyback, a prominent and deadly werewolf, was up for trial for some ordinary crime years ago, and Lyle demanded that he is put away for life because he's a werewolf. 2 days later, Greyback escaped from his holding cell and waited by the Lupin household until nightfall, the full moon. He tried to get both kids, but he only ended up with Remus. It wasn't an accident. It was revenge, Sirius. And Sirius is like, he's like, Fenrir Greyback? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, that's a lot of information. But then he's like, but that doesn't change anything. And how would you even know that? You don't know anything. You're making this up. And Regulus is like, he told me himself. And Sirius is like, my guy, what
are you hanging out with him?
Yeah, he's like, but before he could say anything about being angry about that, Regulus is like, Sirius, why aren't there any other werewolves at Hogwarts? And Sirius is like, because it's rare. He's like, it's not that rare. And he's like, well, it's rare for a wizard to be bitten because, they already know about them and they usually don't. It's usually muggles. And he's like, yeah, but being bitten gives you magic. So they should be here anyway. And Sirius is like, I don't even know if that's true, but it kind of does sound true. So he's like, you're a magical being at that point. Why wouldn't it be? But he's like, but Regulus is like, there have been other werewolf attacks, Sirius, of kids, and they've been documented, and they're not here. And he's like, what are you saying? He's like, I'm saying Remus was brought here to be on Dumbledore's good side. And Sirius is like, what the heck? But Regulus continues. He's like, the first rumors that Greyback and the other werewolves were joining Lord Voldemort came when Remus was 10 years old, when Dumbledore made contact with him, right? When he told him that he could go to Hogwarts. And Remus had told Sirius that he had gotten a personal visit from Dumbledore when he was 10. He thought that, he didn't think that he was going before that. And then, he showed up. But Regulus keeps on going. He's like, Dumbledore knew he couldn't convince adult wolves, but a child? I mean, if he gave that kid an opportunity to go to school, to live a normal life, he would pretty much do whatever he said. And he wouldn't be able to get a job after school, so what else would he do but fight? And Sirius is like, my guy, this is making a little bit too much sense. And I don't like it. But Sirius is still just kind of stunned. He's like, who told you to tell this to me? And Regulus is like, no one. In fact, I'm pretty sure nobody wants me to. And then he's like, but you need to see what he told me. And before Sirius knew it, they were in Slughorn's storage room, and Regulus had pulled out a Pensive, and he was pulling a memory from his head. And Sirius had only been told about this in class. He's never seen a memory before. But then Regulus is telling him to look into it. And he does, and then he wasn't in the storage room anymore. So we're doing some Pensive memories up in here with Regulus.
I really thought it was going to be about, Peter at first.
Yeah. So, are we ready for the memory? For Regulus's memory? Okay. So Sirius falls down through an abyss of smoke into this world creates itself around him. They're standing outside of Bellatrix's place. It's like a huge freaking castle. It's very foreboding because it's Bellatrix's house. And Regulus is waiting in the corner of a courtyard, and he's looking around. And then Greyback walked out of the door and began walking out right when Regulus catches him. He's like, and Regulus is like, why did you lie to them? And Greyback stops for a second. And he's like, what do you mean? And he walks over to Regulus, getting in his face. He's clearly trying to intimidate him. But Regulus is like, you said that there were no werewolves at Hogwarts. Why did you lie? And Greyback is like, there are no werewolves at Hogwarts. And Regulus is like, yes, there are. And Greyback stepped back slightly, and he's like, Dumbledore would never allow it. And he's like, he did. I know it. And Greyback looks at him carefully, and Regulus is like, I have no reason to lie to you. But Greyback's like, okay, how would you know? Surely it's not common knowledge. And he's like, no one's supposed to know, but I worked it out. Once you notice the disappearances every full moon, it's kind of hard to miss. And Greyback is like, okay, how do they manage? Has anyone been turned at Hogwarts? Regulus is like, okay, Dumbledore made him a place to go. He enchanted an old building, hid it from all the students. Well, not all, but tried to. And Greyback sneers, and he's like, typical Dumbledore, always locking up his little pets. How big is it? And Regulus is
like 6 foot. I don't know.
He's like, I don't know. But he gets cut off, and he's like, so Dumbledore gets himself a werewolf, teaches it a wand with a magic like it's a simple human, and locks it in a cage when it's most powerful. And Regulus is like, that's what it sounds like to me, my guy. But then he's like, how old? And Regulus hesitates for a moment, and he's like, 17? Almost? I'm not really sure. And Greyback looks at him and is suddenly very interested, and he's like, male or female? And he's like, male. And suddenly Greyback just grins and begins to laugh. And Sirius can see Regulus in the memory flinch. He's not as strong as he makes himself out to be. He's pretty terrified talking to Greyback. But then when Greyback is quiet, he looks at Regulus and he's like, so that's where Lupin has been all these years. And Regulus is like, you know him? And Greyback grins and is like, know him. He's mine. I turned him nearly 10 years ago. And Regulus comes to his senses and kind of comes back to Earth. He tries to speak, but Greyback speaks over him. He's like, "Thank you, Regulus, for informing me of my lost little cub. I'll be sure to remember that." Regulus sneers, and he's like, "I don't need help from you." And he's like, but you might need protection from me one time." But he's like, "So you know the Lupin boy then? Tell me, how's his father? What does he think of his son now?" And he's like, I don't speak with him." And Greyback is like, it's a shame, really. I really would have loved to know what his father thinks about his perfect son now." And Regulus just doesn't really know what to do, but he does kind of know, he wants to know more. So he's like, "So you think Dumbledore took him just to see if he could train up a werewolf?" And Greyback's like, "I'm sure of it. Like, he thinks he's got one, he's protected." And he's like, "And you don't think he would be, even if Lupin joins the war?" And Greyback laughs, and he's like, "Never. He'd probably send the little one straight to my pack, and once he's out, try to convince others to join." But he has no idea the pull of the pack, the type of magic it holds. He won't be able to do so much as smell one of us before leaving his entire life behind. And Regulus's face doesn't change, and he's like, "He's very devoted to Dumbledore, Lupin. It would be harder to convince him than you might think." And he's like, "Dumbledore has stunted him. That school might be good for you. Learn how to use your little sticks properly. But wolves, we don't need that. We are beings with magic. You are beings with magic. We are magical beings. Nothing your kind has to offer him will ever compare. He will join us. He will come back to me." And then the memory fades away, and Sirius feels himself going back to the surface. So there's a lot to process. The least of which for Sirius is that his brother was clearly at a Death Eater meeting over the winter holidays. That's not like
Merry
great
Christmas.
in his mind. Yeah, Merry Christmas. But Regulus kind of silently retrieves his memory from the Pensive and bottles it, and then puts the Pensive away. And Sirius is like breathing heavily. He's at a loss for words, and he meets eyes with his brother, and he gets it. He really does. Like, something about seeing Greyback say that, like, it seems like Regulus was actually trying to help him. You know, Regulus is like, he's like, "Everything I found said it was true. That pull of the pack is stronger than anything wizards can offer a wolf. So just don't be surprised if he turns away from you." And just like that, Regulus leaves, and Sirius has no idea what to think. So how are we holding up?
Sirius probably has like a midterm like next week. Like,
poor dude. My gosh. Okay, everybody, we get a Snuffles break.
Oh, Snuffles.
She's a good girl. She's so good. She would never do that. You would never become a werewolf, right? She would never.
She's just a dog.
She's just a dog. Okay, so we kind of just have one more scene. I have no idea how long this is gonna be. This might actually be like a legitimate podcast, like not 8 hours long. This is gonna be crazy. This is gonna be bonkers. But it's okay. I felt like we needed one episode to kind of decompress from all of that, so I feel like we'll be okay. But anyway, so we have one more scene. So Remus is chilling, just up in his room, while all this is happening, and he's like, he's noticing Sirius has been gone longer than he said he would. But Remus has the map, so you know, he just pulls it up, and sure enough, they're still talking. He's like, okay, that's gonna be fine. But then he sees them go to Slughorn's for a while, and he's like, something's up with that, but okay. And then he sees Regulus leaving, and then Sirius staying, and Sirius stays there for a long time just on his own, and he's like, do I go see him? Is he good? Like, I feel like I should just, I don't know. But then once he starts walking back, Remus is like, okay, I gotta meet him. I gotta see what's up. So he does. So they meet each other in the hallway, and before Remus could even say anything at all, Sirius pulls him into just the tightest hug that he's ever experienced. And Remus is confused, and he's like, are you good? Everything all right? And he's like, yeah, I just needed to. And so he's like, okay. And Remus just kind of lets him keep on hugging him until he breaks away. And then Sirius is like, I need to tell you something. And so they go to the prefect's common room for privacy. They check the map that Lily's like up with the girls' room tonight. And Sirius runs his hands through his hair a lot, and says that he doesn't know how to tell Remus, and he shouldn't even be the one telling Remus, but he kind of had to. And Remus is confused beyond belief. And then he's like, Sirius, you can tell me anything, it's gonna be all right. But then Sirius tells him that he was bitten by Fenrir Greyback, and that his father had threatened him 2 days before, and then that Greyback believed that Dumbledore was using him as some sort of weapon or protection, and that he was the only werewolf here, but hasn't been the only one bitten. And then Remus doesn't know what to think. And he's like, some part of his mind is like, okay, this seems to like answer everything, like every little question that he's had in the back of his head of like why he's here, why there aren't any others, why his dad seemed to be so deeply personally hurt by the fact that he's a werewolf. And now this all fits together. So it's not like he can just brush it off. So that's not great. And he realizes that he's completely tuning out everything that Sirius is saying about now. And when he comes back to it, Sirius is saying that he had actually seen it, that he had seen Greyback admit it. But that doesn't necessarily make it all true. But he had to tell Remus anyway, and that they would figure it out together. And then Remus is standing and leaving the room, and Sirius is like, oh, what's happening? And then he's kind of, chasing him a little bit. And then they arrive at McGonagall's office, and she's confused. But Remus practically yells at her that he needs to see his dad. And that he needs her flu, and she needs to flu him home right now. And so she lets it, because she's like, I don't freaking know what's going on here. But yeah, so I think for about an hour, Minerva and Sirius just sit awake on the couch. Sirius said nothing about what's going on. He's like, I think it has to do with his condition. Maybe. And that's about it. That's all that was really said. But when Remus returns, he's like calm, like way more calm than Sirius expected. And he just thanks McGonagall for use of her fireplace. And he's like, Sirius, we should just go to bed. And then on the way back up to the tower, he's just says that his dad confirmed it was all true. And Sirius says he's so sorry. And Remus is like, it doesn't matter. I just want to go to sleep. And so then they're in bed, and Sirius is just wildly wondering if he's made the right decision or if he should just kept it to himself. But then Remus is like, are you gonna be able to come with me tomorrow to Dumbledore? Can you do that? He's like, what? He's like, I'm gonna talk to Dumbledore tomorrow about all of this, and I need you to be there. And Sirius is like, freaking yeah, guess I will. And that's the end of the episode.
Gosh.
Yeah, this one is actually a shorter one than usual. How long? We've been recording for 54 minutes. This might be a record for the shortest episode of the season, but I think it all deserved to be in its own.
It's a pretty heavy one, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I could have added anything to this one. But yeah, we do need some more funky good times. I've literally put in the next one because, as you can imagine, some other stuff has to happen. But like, it's not gonna get any worse.
You're saying that was the funky good time, and I was like, no.
No. I'm saying next episode that I've literally written in that there has to be some funky good times. So if anybody has anything they want to see as a funky good time, DM me. Cause I'm doing exams. If we gotta bring back Jeffrey.
He shows up for the Christmas special. Except it's over.
Yeah, we already did the Christmas special, babe. I don't know what to tell you about that. But yeah, so we gotta figure out what I'm doing for fun times, because here's the issue with my brain right about now. Since I'm focused on other stuff, I know all the plot stuff that has to happen, like the important stuff like that. I know that has to happen, but fun, funky, good times, my brain is lacking. So if you got anything, you're like, yo, I want to see this go down, literally send it to me. If I'm going to use any input from audience, it's going to be this week. But yeah. So It'll be good at some point, I promise, guys. But at least Sirius and Remus have each other, you know? Like, good for them. Maybe? Okay, you're not on board. That's fine. That's all good. You don't have to be. Yeah. Yeah, also Peter and Kyra. They're kind of a thing now. I don't know. I debated. I was like, do I want them to just be friends or do I want something else to happen? I debated on that for a while and I was like, yeah, screw it. They're gonna date. It's gonna happen. Well, probably. I could change my mind again because Peter still has no idea what he's doing. Yeah. Peter's going through a couple things.
They're like all struggling, except James seems fine.
James and Lily are just vibing. But okay, yeah, I was gonna also end this with Regulus leaving and like almost saying something about Peter, and then just kind of seeing Sirius having. I think this still happened. I just didn't write it in. And then he kind of sees Sirius having a crisis and is like, I'm just gonna leave it. I'm just not gonna go there. But yeah, I think as I was saying, I think Regulus for sure saw Peter at the party, but just was like, I feel like a lot has happened, and I don't need to also tell Sirius that. He'll figure that out at some later point. Felt like he had more pressing things to tell. Yeah. So, anyway.
So glad Regulus knows everything and Sirius knows nothing.
Yep. But, you know, I think Sirius doubting Remus had to come from somewhere, you know, eventually, once that happens. And if he's had a couple people be like, hey, by the way, this might happen, heads up, you know. You could see how he might believe it one day. But anyway, you gotta go decorate gingerbread houses.
Yeah. I have a couple minutes. But
okay, well, we can finish this up. Yeah, this is crazy. This is gonna be like a 45-minute episode. This is bonkers.
We did it.
We did it. We made something that isn't gonna be awful for me to edit. All right. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I really appreciate it. A shout out to the caption crew who is still making slow and steady work. Love them. Yeah, and shout out to Benji Wilson for the music, Metamorph Montes for the cover art, as always. I'm sorry. I just am. This is stuff I find this so interesting. I'm like, oh my gosh, what if this happened? And everybody else is like, why? Why do you do this to me? So I'm sorry. I hope you all, if you are in America, you had a good Thanksgiving. If you're outside of America, get ready for Christmas. And I hope everybody who's taking exams takes them. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Bye! Snuffles is whining at me to lift her up here, so I'm gonna do that. 1 second. Yeah, Snuffles, show him your butt. Can you stop? Okay. She was just licking my hand. I've lost my spot. Don't continue! She's like, what if I lick your hand more? Yeah.
And then that was just a whole lot worse, kind of.
Look at Snuffle. You can just see her little nose.
Oh, Snuffles.
She didn't like that. She didn't like that kiss very much.